Well, we planted our squash a little bit late this year, but we planted them on the raised beds, and one of the beds was our clear plastic and one was black. And just a reminder, if you use a black plastic and the foliage isn't covering the plastic, you need to put that mulch on it because it can get too hot. But behind me here, you can tell that we don't have that problem, especially on the white plastic. Our foliage has really covered them. We started out also with the row covers, and it worked quite well, but we still ended up with the squash bug, so you really need to be out checking them. But I'd like to show you some of the varieties that we planted this year. Of course, we went with the traditional straight neck squash. We're real pleased with that variety. It was the early prolific. We also put in some of the patty pan type squash, which is really a nice one, stir-fried or baked or even put on the grill. And then we tried a couple of varieties of scallopini squash. But one of the things that I'd like to address is what we're getting here with this yellow and green mottling, and especially on this sunburst variety, you'll see it showing up a little bit more. And it never fails this time of year. A lot of the county extension offices will get calls about gardeners that are confused and think that their squash has maybe crossed with a gourd or a zucchini or something differently. And really there's one thing that you need to remember. There are about 9 different genera or different types of cucurbits, or the vine crops. And of course those include cucumbers and watermelons and cantaloupes, as well as the squash and gourds. There's also many different types of species. It is possible within one species for them to cross. So we could get a cross between say a zucchini and the scallopini because they're in the same species. So it would be possible to get them to cross. But there's only one species, the cucurbita, that will cross between other species. So really, when people think that maybe a cucumber or watermelon would cross, it's very unlikely. But the crossing, again, is really something that you need to keep in mind, because for it to show up, we would have to save the seeds from these plants and plant them next year for that cross to ever show up. So with you putting in plants this year, the only way that you would get a cross would be if that plant was a seed you saved from last year, or if there was a mix-up maybe at the seed company, which is not too common that they would actually get 2 plants to cross. A lot of times though, what we'll see is maybe a variation because of a virus disease. And usually the plant, the foliage, will be a mottled color just like the fruit, and it will be kind of distorted, and the fruit will be a little bit more knotty, and that is a virus disease. And if that shows up again, the plant will be really obvious in its characteristics, and you'll need to just pull it out. Now in our case, one of the varieties that we planted, it's characteristic for it to be yellow with the green bottom end like this. And what's happening is, just in the development of that, with the sun and the different genotype, we're getting a little bit of mottling. So really ours, I don't think, is a cross or a virus, either one. We're just getting a little bit of mottled fruit. It doesn't affect the taste either way. And if you did get a cross, it wouldn't hurt the flavor that much either. Now the virus, sometimes the fruit might still be edible, but it would be a little bit harder and tougher to eat. So again, it is possible to get a cross within the same species, but it wouldn't show up until you replanted the seed. So a lot of times what we think is a cross is really the virus. Now the other thing I'd like to show you is called wet rot, and this occurs usually on the maybe like zucchini squash or the yellow neck or even the crooked neck. And what happens is, before the blossom falls off, it starts to rot and get this bearded growth, and it is a fungus. It's usually more of a problem in the spring when we're getting a lot of heavy rains, but if you're irrigating your garden overhead, you can still get the disease. The best thing is to pull these off right when you see them and dispose of them, because it can continue to reinfect the plant. There's really not a fungicide labeled to control this, but they tell us that using other fungicides for different types of disease on squash will give us a little bit of control. So again, the best thing is just to pick them off and throw them away so they don't continue to reinfect. And again, it has to do a lot with moisture and the soil and those types of things splashing up. But again, we're real pleased with our squash harvest, and again, it's fun to try those different types of varieties.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. You can also find more recent videos on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.